Hi, today we'll be doing M1 chapter 5 forces and friction. So, forces. The first thing that we're going to learn is how to find the components of a force. So, if you have a force here like this is a force of 10 newtons, and you want to find what is the component of this force in this direction and in this direction. So, if the angle here is 20, the component here will be 10 cos 20, and the component here will be 10 sine 20. Now, there is an elaborate explanation why this will be cos and this will be sine, but a good way to remember, a rule of thumb, is that this component contains the angle with the actual force. Therefore, this is a cos component. And the other component, the perpendicular component, which does not contain this angle, will be the sine component. And one more step we have to learn, how would you understand that these two axis will contain your components of the force? Well, whenever you get a force, draw your axis. Okay, draw your four quadrants. So you can see that your force will lie between any two axes on a single quadrant. So the axis which contain the force will contain the components of the force. The axis which contains the angle will be the cos component, and the other axis will automatically be the sine component. So this will allow you to do example 1, 2, 3, and go on to exercise 5a. There's nothing more to discuss here. Now, as for example 3, we have to learn a new rule, that is the formula for finding the resultant. Okay, now we will move on to example number 3 on page number 87. So this is page number 87, example number 3. So what we have here is an object, and this is the horizontal line. This is just the horizontal line. We have a force P of magnitude 10 newtons, which is at an angle of 45 degrees, and we have a force Q of 8 newtons. Q is 8, and this angle is 30. We want to find out the resultant force of P and Q. The resultant force is that force which can replace both of these forces and still move this object in the same direction. That is the resultant force. So, first of all, we have to draw a vector diagram. For drawing a vector diagram, we have to pick up this vector 8, this 8 Newton vector, and place it over here. And you then pick up this vector P, which is 10 newtons, which is a bit longer because it is 10, and place it here, like this. This is your 10 Newton vector, or P vector. You have to join the vectors head to tail, like this, as if they're going in one direction, as if this is a process. Then, you have to join the tail of the first vector to the head of the last vector, and you join it like this. This vector is your resultant vector. Now you can see that your resultant vector also has a certain angle with the horizontal. We don't know that angle, but we do know that this angle here is 30, because 8 was making an angle of 30 degrees below the horizontal. Now if we apply the formula, okay, so what you do is you basically create a parallelogram from this 8 and from the 10. How? You copy this 10 Newton vector here, and you copy this 8 Newton vector here. So from there you can see, so this is 45, this was 45, and this is 30, this is 75, and therefore this angle will be 105, because these are allied angles and they both will make 180 degree when combined. This is a property of parallel lines. So if this is 75 degree, this will be 180 minus 75, that is 105 degrees. We are concerned with this triangle here, this basic triangle. So the resultant can be found using this formula. R squared is equal to 8 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 into 8 into 10 into cos 105. So this is basically the formula for finding the resultant, and from there we can get the value of our resultant to be 14.3, as it is given in the example. Now we will learn how to find that angle. So you should know the sine rule by now. Basically the sine rule says that sine 30 plus theta, basically this 30 plus theta divided by the opposite side, that is 10, is equal to sine 105, sin 105 divided by the opposite side, that is the r. We now know the magnitude of r, that is 14.3. From there, all the other things are known other than this theta. So sine 30 plus theta will be equal to 0.673 after doing all the workings. From there, we can get the value of theta to be 12.4. Okay, so this is how you get the value of theta, and this is how you get your resultant. Now, there is another method for finding the resultant and your angle of the resultant when there are more than two forces. So the method that I'm going to show now will work for two vectors. They could be forces. This method will work for two vectors as well as more than two vectors. It will work for any number of vectors. So, for example, first of all, let me draw this axis so that my working becomes easier. So, for example, you have these forces here, okay? You have this 10 Newton force at an angle of 20, okay? You have this 20 Newton force at an angle of 70, right? You have this 15 Newton force at an angle of 30. You have these three forces. You want to find the resultant force, that is the force that can replace all these forces. What you have to do first is that you have to find the components of each of these forces. So let us first find the components of the 10 Newton force. This lies in this quadrant, so its components will be here and here. Here the component will be 10 cos 20. Why cos? Because this line contains the angle. Automatically this will be the 10 sin 20. So you have broken 10 into its components, so you have to cut 10. Just to remind yourself that you have found the components of 10. After that, we can similarly find the components of 20. So 20 lies in this quadrant, so its components will lie in this axis and this axis. Here the component will be 20 cos 70. Here the component will be 20. Automatically that was cos, so this will automatically be sin 70. 20 has been broken down. 15 lies in this quadrant. Here is a component, here is a component. So 15, this does not contain your angle, so 15 sin 30. And here is a component, that is 15 cos 30. So these are your components, and 15 has also been broken down into its components. So the resultant force is basically the sum of the forces. What we're going to do here is that we're going to find the sum of the forces in the x direction and the sum of the forces in the y direction. So the resultant force, or the sum of the forces in the x direction, this is basically the sum of the forces in the x direction or the resultant force in x direction. So this can also be called the resultant force in x direction. But I prefer calling it sum of the forces because we are going to add the forces now. So this is the sum. This is sum of the forces in the x direction, which is equal to these forces, that is 10 cos 20 plus 20 cos 70. So this was in the positive x direction, right? And this is in the negative x direction, so this will be minus 15 cos 30, right? Similarly, you can find the resultant force in the y direction, and which can also be called the sum of the forces in the y direction, which is these forces minus these forces. This will be minus because this is in the negative y direction. So 15 sin 30 plus 10 sin 20 minus 20 sin 70. So these are the forces. Just give me a minute to calculate these forces. Okay, so this will be 3.25 and 15. This force will be minus 7.87. So this is the resultant force in the x direction, and this is a positive value. Therefore, the resultant force in the x direction is towards the right. That is 3.25. The resultant force in the y direction has a negative value. Therefore, the resultant force in the vertical plane is downwards, and it has a value of 7.87. Negative, that's why downwards. If it was positive, it would have been upwards. Right. So these are the forces. These are the components of the resultant forces in the x and the y directions. From there, what you do is you create a triangle. So this 7.87 that you have here, you have to draw this force head to tail like this. 7.87. Just transfer it here so that it becomes head to tail. After that, you have to join the tail of the first vector to the head of the first the tail of the first vector to the head of the last vector, just like we did in the previous example. So you have a triangle here. So the length of this triangle will now give you the magnitude of the resultant force. So this is a right angle triangle, so this resultant force magnitude will be 3.25 square plus 7.87 square root over square root. So let us find that. 3.25 square plus 7.87 squared. So that gives us 8.51 to be the magnitude of this resultant force. Now, what is the angle of the resultant force? You can see that this resultant force makes an angle. This is the direction of the resultant force. This resultant force makes an angle of theta below the horizontal. Now, you can easily find this value of theta since this is a right angle triangle. Tan theta is equal to 7.87 divided by 3.25. From there, you can get your value of theta. So theta should be 67.6 degrees. So our resultant will look something like this. If you have your axis like this, our resultant force will be this. You have to provide a force of 8.51 newtons at an angle of 67.6 degree below the positive x-axis, and this force will replace all these three forces. This is how you find the resultant force if there are more than this also works for two vectors. This works for any number of vectors. First of all, you have to find the components. Then you find the resultant force in the x direction, the resultant force in the y direction. You draw the triangle, you find the resultant, and you find the theta. So this will work for any number of vectors. Okay. So now you should be able to do exercise 5A. I'm not going in that exercise. I will directly go to exercise number 5B and number 5. So we are now on page number 93. Page 93. Exercise 5B. And this is math number 5. So we have a particle. One more convention that I follow is that here the force is given like this. Here the force is given like this. I like to draw my forces away from the particle. Because if there are multiple forces, for example, you have this particle here, one force is given like this, one force is given like this, the other is given like this, the other is given like this. So you should follow one convention. These two forces are away from the particle, these two forces are towards the particle. It is better to follow a single convention, that is, instead of drawing it here, you draw it here. Instead of drawing it here, you draw it here. Okay, then you have all these forces in the same direction going away from the particle. It will be easier for you to find the components. So that being said, the force is given here like this. So I will not follow this convention. I will draw my force away from the particle. This 30 Newton force right here. Now let us fill up the rest of the information by reading the question. So what we have here is a particle of mass m kg. So first of all, we know that the particle has a mass of n kg. So it has a weight mg, and it is sliding down a smooth slope. Okay, so we have a smooth slope that is at an angle of 30 degree to the horizontal. So this slope is at an angle of 30 degree to the horizontal. The normal reaction between the particle and the plane is 5 newtons. So normal reaction is the force that is always perpendicular to the surface. Okay, so here the particle is on this surface. So the normal reaction will be perpendicular to this surface here, and it has a magnitude of 5 newton. The normal reaction is a magnitude of 5. Calculate the value, the mass m of the particle. So before going along with the math, you should remember this abbreviation ref. What is this ref? This ref will tell you whether you have put all the forces on your diagram or not. W stands for weight, we have put the weight, so W is okay. R stands for normal reaction, we have put that, that's okay. E stands for external forces, 30 is an external force, we have to check for other external forces in the question, there could be more than one, so E is gone. And F stands for friction, we don't have friction because this is a smooth surface. So always have this checklist ready so that you don't miss any forces on your diagram, then your entire math will be incorrect. After that, we have to find the components of the forces. So when a particle is on a plane, you have to find the components of the forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane. As such, here we have to find the components of the forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane, like this. So we have to break the components of the forces along these axes. So this 5 Newton reaction is already along this plane, this axis. So we don't have to break it. We just have to break mg and 30 newtons. So this angle is also 30, corresponding angles. So 30 will have two components. One component will be here, the other here. So this is 30 cos 30, and this is 30 automatically, that is sin 30. We have broken down 30, so cut 30. Then mg. The angle here is 60, so therefore this angle will be 30. So mg lies in this quadrant. Remember, now our quadrant is like this. It is an inclined quadrant. So our mg is in this quadrant, so its component will be here and here. The component here will be mg cos 30. The component here will be mg sin 30. So now we have broken out mg as well. You check for any other forces which are not aligned in these axes. We don't have any such forces. So these are our forces. We have this force here, this force, and this force. So these are the four axes and these four groups of forces that we have to work with. Now we know that the particle maintains an equilibrium perpendicular to the plane. The particle is not jumping as it goes up the plane or down the plane. Therefore, perpendicular to the plane, the particle is remaining in equilibrium. Therefore, we can say that this force is equal to this force. Basically, this force is equal to this force. It maintains an equilibrium in this direction. So this force, this direction force, is 5. And the downward force is 30 sin 30 plus mg cos 30. Basically, G is 9.8, so we know everything other than M. That will allow us to find the value of M, that is 0.589 kg. That's your mass, and that is our answer to part A. In part B, the question asks us to find the acceleration of the particle. Okay, so now the particle is going down the plane, so we have to find the acceleration of the particle. As the particle is accelerating down the plane, so any forces in the downward direction is positive, and the other direction is automatically negative. We have to apply Newton's second law of motion. Sum of the forces is equal to mass times acceleration. So sum of the forces, there is the positive forces minus the negative forces. The positive force is the downward force, that is mg sin 30. The negative force is the force that is opposing this force, that is 30 cos 30 is equal to m. We know the value of m, but let us write m since we have written m here. M A. So this m we just found in our previous part. This is 0.589, or m is 0.589. So we know everything in this equation except for a. So that will allow us to find the value of a. That will be 4.9 meter per second square. So your math is done. Moving on to the concept of friction. So there is something called a maximum friction. Have you ever noticed that there is a certain amount of force with which we have to push an object before it starts moving? Okay. So before that, you have not reached the maximum friction of that object. So for a certain object and a certain surface, that combination has a certain limit of friction. For example, you're trying to move this heavy box, which has a maximum friction of 10 newtons. The maximum friction is 10 newtons. So if you push the box with a force of 2 newtons, the box will not move. But our Newton's second law says that if an object remains at rest, that means the resulting force on the object is 0. So if you are providing this 2 Newton force, which force is balancing this 2 Newton force? Yes, the surface, in response to your 2 Newton force, will generate a friction of 2 Newton force. Remember that the maximum friction is 10 Newton, so the surface can very easily provide 2 Newton force to oppose your push. Now, if you provide a force of 3 Newtons, then the surface will also provide an opposing force, a friction of 3 Newton force. The object is still not moving. Now, if you push your force to 9 Newtons, then can the surface provide a friction of 9 Newtons to oppose your push? Yes, it can, because it has a maximum limit of 10 Newtons. 9 Newton friction. 9 minus 9, 0. The object does not move. The moment you provide a friction of 10 newtons, right? The moment you're providing a push of 10 newtons, the surface also provides a friction of 10 newtons because it has a maximum limit of 10 newtons, so it can provide 10 newtons. However, this is the maximum friction of this combination, right? It cannot provide a friction greater than 10 newtons. It has just reached its limit, 10.000. It has reached its limit. This situation, where the surface is providing its maximum friction, this situation is called a limiting equilibrium. This is called a limiting equilibrium. So unless you reach the maximum force, the maximum friction, that is 10 newton, if you provide 2 newton of push, the surface will retaliate with 2 newton. You provide 3. You provide 9 newton push, the surface retaliates with 9 newton opposing force, the object still does not move. You provide 10 newton force, the surface retaliates with the 10 newton friction, the object still does not move, but it is just on the point of slipping. This is what we also call just the point of slipping. So this is also called limiting equilibrium or the point of slipping. Now, what will happen if you provide a push of perhaps 12 newtons, right? The maximum friction limit of this combination is 10 newtons. So it can provide 10 newtons at max, it cannot provide any further. So now what we have? Now we have a resultant force of 2 newtons towards the right. We now have a resultant force of 2 newtons towards the right. Now the object will start accelerating. Now the object will start moving. It is no longer in equilibrium. It is a resultant force now. So we talked about equilibrium, we talked about the limiting equilibrium, and we talked about the broken equilibrium or the acceleration state of a particle. So there is a formula for finding this maximum friction. The formula is mu r, where this r is the normal reaction between this box and the surface, and mu is a property of the surface which is called the coefficient of friction. This is a property of the surface. So this is why the heavier the object, the more difficult it is to move, because the heavier the object, the more the value of r, and therefore the more the maximum friction. So the more you have to push to cross that maximum friction barrier. So now we are going to move on to chapter review 5, page number 99. Question number 5. So we are now on page number 99. Question number 5, chapter review 5. So the reason that I've chosen this math is because there is a box and we have forces on the top of the box, we have a force below the box. So this makes the entire situation very difficult. The first thing that you have to do here is to model this entire box as a small particle, and then you draw all the forces from the center of the particle. It is the same thing. We always ignore the dimensions of the box, the particles in our M1 syllabus. So now, and one more convention that I wanted to follow was I always draw the forces away from the particle. So this 100 Newton force that you have here coming towards the particle, I'm going to draw it away from the particle like this, 100 Newton at an angle of 30 degrees. So it does make sense, because if you have a force of 100 Newton pushing in this direction, it is equal. It is just equal to 100 Newton force pulling the particle in this direction. So we have another force of 150 newtons at an angle of 45, and we have a friction force F. Okay, so now the diagram looks a bit more friendly. We have to show that the magnitude due to resistance, magnitude of the resistance due to friction F, this value of F is this value. We have to show that this is the value. So we have a rough surface, constant forces shown in the diagram. The box is moving at a constant speed. Okay, so it is moving at a constant speed, therefore the forces are balanced. The right forces are equal to the left forces. The up forces are equal to the down forces, because the object is moving at a constant speed. By modeling the box as a particle, show that the magnitude of the resistance is this. Okay. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to find the components of these forces. For forces moving on a plane, we have to break the forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane. As such, the yellow lines here. So let us first break this force. So this force lies in this quadrant. Here is a component. Here is a component. This component will be 150 cos 45. The other component will automatically be 150 sine 45. We have broken this component, broken this force, cut this force. This 100 is in this quadrant. Here is a component. Here is a component. This component will be 100 cos 30. 100 cos 30, and this will be 100 sine 30. So this is cos because this line contains this angle, therefore this is cos, and automatically the other is sine. So now we have all the forces along the plane or perpendicular to the plane. So let us circle our forces so that we have a clear idea of what's going on. So one more force that we have to put here is our normal reaction. Okay. So just a reminder, make your ref checklist. The weight we have you put the weight? So nothing about the mass of the particle is given here, so it is not necessary to put the weight. We have put the normal reaction, we have put the external forces, all the forces are external, and we have put the friction. So that should allow us to calculate this value of F. Since the box is moving at a constant speed, therefore our friction, that is our left force, should be equal to our right forces. The forces are balanced. So our left force, that is our friction, should be equal to right forces, which is 150 cos 45 plus 100 cos 30. So let us try to bring this expression into the form that they have wanted. So first we have to break our cos 45. Cos 45 can be written as root 2 by 2. And our cos 30 can be written as root 3 by 2. So this 2 breaks this into 75, root 2. This 2 breaks this 100 into 50, root 3. So they have taken a 25 common. Let us take our 25 common and see what we get. We get a 3 root 2 and we get a 2 root 3. Basically what they wanted. We have just proven the answer. So now we're going to do number 9 of page number 100. So this is basically the math which contains most of the concepts that we have learned in this chapter. So try to concentrate on this math very carefully. So this is page number 100. Question number 9. We have a car of this mass traveling down a rough road that is inclined at 10 degrees to the horizontal. So we have an inclined plane at an angle of 10 degrees. So we have a car here. Always model your objects as very small particles so that all the forces pass through it. So it has a mass. So we have to put the weight here. The weight should be 2150 g. Don't forget to put the g. mg is your weight. 10 degrees to the horizontal, the engine applies a constant force of 700 in the direction of the motion of the car. So this engine, the car is already moving downwards. The engine also provides a further force of 700 newtons downwards. So the resistance of motion has a constant force of magnitude F. So the car is moving downwards. Automatically the resistance will obviously be in the opposite direction. In this direction we have a force of F. Right, given that the car is traveling at a straight line at a constant speed of 22, find the magnitude of F. Okay, so we have to find this magnitude F, and let us see whether we have put all the forces or not. Right or left? So W stands for weight. We have put the weight. R is normal reaction. We haven't put that, so put a normal reaction here. External forces, we have our 700 Newton force. Other than that, we don't have any other external forces. So that is our only external force. Friction, yes, we have provided the friction here. That's all. Now what we have to do is we have to break the forces into our components. We have to break the forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane, as we know. So we have our R, F, and 700 already aligned along with our yellow lines. The only force that is not aligned is this weight. So this angle is 10. This is 80. So this is 10. We have to break this weight here, that is 2150g. This is the cos component because this line contains the angle, and automatically this is the sine component, 2150g sine 10 degrees. But we already have the 700, so add these two together. We have broken our weight, so cut this weight and circle the forces at the ends of the four axes. So these are the forces that we have to work with. As the object is moving, as the car is moving at a constant speed, therefore the forces are all balanced. And we have to find our value of friction, so we have to work with this line over here. So our downward forces will be equal to our upward forces. Our downward force is this, and our upward force is our friction. So downward force 2150g sine 10 plus 700 should be equal to our upward force, that is F, and your value of F should be 4400 newtons to two significant figures, of course. Now, The driver brakes suddenly. In the subsequent motion, the car continues to skid and comes to a standstill after 40 meters. So we have a situation where the car was traveling at a velocity, at a speed of 22. It was traveling at a speed of 22, and then it goes a distance of 40 meters, and then comes to a standstill, basically a 0 meter per second velocity, from 22 meter per second to 0 meter per second after traveling a distance of 40. So from there we have to find the coefficient of friction. So that is later. First of all, we have to calculate the acceleration. So the brakes are applied in subsequent motion. It is skidding. Okay, so the driving force is removed, and the force due to resistance other than friction is again modeled as F. Okay. Now for the second part, we have to draw a new diagram because the driving force has been removed and we now have friction because the wheels have been locked and the car is skidding. Initially the car was rolling, but now the car is skidding, so now we have a friction between the wheels and the surface. So let us draw a diagram. Basically we have an inclined plane at an angle of 10 degrees. We have our car here. So let us make sure that we put all our forces by using this ref. Weight is here 2150 G. We have a normal direction R here. External force, well, we have an external force of 4400. That is our forces other than friction, the resistive forces other than friction, 4400 as it is. This remains unchanged as it is said in the question. And we now have a new force, that is friction, F, small letter F. We have the friction now, and we don't have our forward driving forces. Once again, we have to break these forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane. So all the other forces are along the plane and perpendicular to the plane other than the weight only. So this is our 10 degrees. So we have to break this weight here, 2150 G, cos 10, and 2150 G, sin 10. We have broken our weight, so cut it down. Now what we have to do is we have to find our value of the coefficient of friction. So for the coefficient of friction, we have to first calculate the deceleration because here the object is not in equilibrium, it is decelerating. Therefore, we have to use the formula F equal to ma to find our value of F. But before that, we have to find the value of A because here our force F is unknown, our friction is unknown. We know the mass, but our acceleration is also unknown. So how can we find our value of acceleration? We had discussed that our object goes from 22 meter per second to 0 meter per second after traveling a distance of 40. If we write these things down in our SUVAT structure, we know that our displacement is 40, our initial velocity is 22, our final velocity is 0. We want to find the acceleration. So which equation works with S, U, V, and A? V squared equals u square plus 2as. So our v is 0, our u is 22, and our acceleration we have to find out, and we have a displacement of 40. So our acceleration turns out to be minus 6.05. Minus means that our car is decelerating, which is pretty obvious. So now we have our acceleration. So now we can use the formula sum of f is equal to ma. Our car is still traveling downwards. Therefore, all the downward forces are positive and the opposite forces are all negative. So 2150 G sin 10 minus 4400 plus F, that is all the output forces, is equal to m. Our mass of the car is 2150 kg and our acceleration value is 0.65. So you have to put the acceleration as you found it is using the negative sign. So that should give you your value of friction. So our value of friction should be okay. So our friction should have a value of 12266. This should be our value of friction. Now the car is skidding. Therefore, the friction that is acting here is the maximum friction. So just after you cross the limiting equilibrium, and then if you're moving at a constant speed, the friction that is acting is its maximum friction value, and that maximum friction has a formula of mu r. Our maximum friction, that is mu r, is 12266, and we don't know our value of mu. That is something that we have to find out, but we can know our value of r. Basically, these force and these forces balance because the car is not jumping up and down as it is rolling down the slope, as it is skidding down the slope. So r is equal to 2150g cos 10. That is 2150g cos 10. That is our value of r, is equal to 12266. That should give us our value of the coefficient of friction. Yes, so our coefficient of friction turns out to be 0.59. That is the coefficient of friction. So please take note of this part because I have to erase this part for the. Okay, I don't have to erase this part because the rest of the answers are basically can be explained verbally. So you have to criticize this model with relation to the frictional forces acting on the car. Right. So the resistive forces, they said, are constant, and it remains at a value of F. On the last line of just before part B question, they say that the again model has a constant force of magnitude F newtons. So as the car slows down, the air resistance on the car is supposed to decrease. Therefore, the resistive forces will not remain constant. So that is a flaw. The motion of the car. It was said that as the car was skidding, the car will remain in a straight line. But it is unlikely. If a car is skidding, it is supposed to turn right or left. It is not supposed to remain in a straight line. So that is another criticism that we can draw from this model. So that was basically chapter number 5, forces and friction. If you found this video useful, please subscribe and comment that you found this video useful. Press the bell icon so that you know when I upload a new video. This really encourages me to continue making videos for you. And thank you very much for watching.